Howard Buffett, who is billionaire Warren Buffett's son, owns a town, essentially, in Illinois, Decatur, Illinois. And we're joined now by Amos Barshad of 11 News, who was out in Decatur to try to figure out what it's like living in a town effectively owned by a billionaire. And the story is terrific. You can put it up here. It's called American Oligarchy, and it's something of a kind of allegory for our broader society, because we all live under the thumb of a Warren Buffett, one way or the other. But these folks, live right specifically underneath that thumb, and they can see it every single day. Amos, welcome to the program. Thanks for joining us, and congrats on this piece.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I should clarify, he obviously doesn't legally own the town.
Yes.
That's not possible. But yeah, his influence over, 2 decades now can be seen, can be felt. And that was kind of my hope from the piece, is to go to Decatur and to hear from regular people, what it feels like to live amongst Buffett's influence. And that's how the story was first introduced to me. I was happening to speak with someone who was born and raised in Decatur, who's now a professor at the University of Virginia. His name is A.D. Carson, and we were actually talking about a completely different topic. It was the Illuminati's popularity in hip hop. And he just kind of happened to mention, this thing with Howard Buffett, which I just had never heard of. I don't think a lot of people have. But after he told me about it, I read up and learned that there has been some great reporting on him, some of his influence on the southern border, some more positive coverage. He donates a lot of money internationally, globally. But I felt like this piece hadn't been done. This piece where we focus on the people of Decatur, what it feels like to live, under the influence of Howard Buffett.
Yeah, and in 2019, my then colleague at The Intercept, Rachel Cohen, wrote about this kind of phenomenon. She focused on the weird marijuana fight that was going on. And that was my first introduction to the idea that Howard Buffett had decided he was going to spend his money, effectively just kind of running the show over here, and has all of these weird kind of interests in being a sheriff, sometimes actually, as you report, literally being a sheriff, otherwise kind of playing one on TV. But so when I say that he effectively owns the town, like what is that? What does it mean to kind of, like, how does he exert his influence in Decatur?
Absolutely. So first of all, that Intercept piece that you mentioned is a great piece, and I encourage everyone to seek that out. She was reporting from the time as it was revealed that he had pushed back against a dispensary. So Illinois had legalized, dispensaries, marijuana dispensaries, statewide. And so then the municipality of Decatur had to decide if they were going to have one. And a lot of people were very pro the dispensary. There was a referendum that was run in the township of Decatur, and showed that there was overwhelming majority of people wanted the dispensary. But basically, as that piece, the Intercept piece reported, due to Buffett's explicit influence, the city council members, the majority, voted against the dispensary. And it gets tied back into his personal views against marijuana, against, pro-war on drugs. Interestingly, there's a big addiction recovery center that he built in town, which feels, objectively a good thing to provide addiction treatment, recovery treatment. But where it gets more complicated is in the idea of how it's a philosophy, right? It's like a world building. It's how he sees the world. So he believes in addiction recovery, but he doesn't believe in access to marijuana. So, you see these things as you shouldn't be opposed, but in his point of view, they are. So, it's a very a palpable thing that he's able to control, what happens in this town through his influence, and through his financial support. From there, it goes on to just kind of, when you walk around the town, you'll see signs, thanking his foundation. The local zoo has an exhibit for the paying homage to the guards of the Virunga National Park in Congo and the mountain gorillas. Strange, but it's one of his passions, so it's there. The Children's Museum, which is a private museum, it has an exhibit called the Heroes Hall, which is like this very, very explicitly pro law enforcement exhibit. You basically go in there and you read these placards about how the police are heroes, and you can put on different uniforms and pretend to be a cop, and you're told about what the great things that the police do. And this is a children's museum. It's like all primary colors and fun running around stuff. There's a statue of Buffett from his time when he was actually officially sheriff. There's a statue of him outside of the museum as well. So yeah, I mean, it's just about, I think, when someone has this amount of money and this amount of focus on a small town, they're able to actually literally change people's daily lives, the things that they see, the information that they're provided through their daily lives.
Now, his representative told you in the story when you asked to potentially speak with Howard Buffett, basically that, listen, he would have moved out of Illinois years ago if it wasn't for his wife's health. He's too busy for Decatur, basically, except for planting and harvesting season. He's traveling around the world with his charities. But you also point out that Decatur is a really interesting kind of case study. It's not your typical maybe Rust Belt city. There's something, it's shrinking like many Rust Belt cities are. But analysts look at it and say there's a decent number of jobs here. People are able to make a living. What can you tell us actually about Decatur just as a city? What kind of city is it? What is it like? And how has the city reacted? You have some really interesting stuff in there too about how the city itself has reacted in different ways to Howard Buffett over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. This is all stuff that I learned from my reporting, and I really enjoyed being in Decatur and learning this. And so yeah, it's kind of classic Illinois farm country, as you imagine. You're driving through and you're seeing rows and rows of crops, and it feels endless. And the big company that's there is Archer Daniel Midlands, this agricultural giant. So they take all this corn and make all these products that end up in our food in all these millions of different ways, and which is obviously a very lucrative business to be in. And that's actually what brought Howard Buffett to town originally, which is another kind of layer to this, that he's not from Illinois, he's from Nebraska, famously like his father. And so he comes here almost arbitrarily and becomes, starts building his influence over the years. So there are jobs, and this is a profitable company. What I heard from locals, people that are involved in the city in different ways, activists, and also a member of the school board, is that they feel that there's been a lack of the maintenance of the infrastructure, the things that the school needs, the thing the city needs, like schools. And I was told that literally some of the public pools have been closed down as this private pool kind of complex had come in. Just things that any person that lives in a town would think about, if you have children or not, you're just, these are the basics that a town might need. And that's what they felt. They felt that, despite the fact that there's this benefactor who has spent all this money, somehow none of that has manifested in, the basic needs of a town, what a town really needs. And yeah, I think that's kind of the interesting point. Someone spending money, are they spending money the way they want to, or are they spending money the way that the town might need? And so, yeah, so I think it's, while Decatur has had factory closures that have led to job loss, as we've seen throughout the country, throughout the Rust Belt, the feeling that I got from some of these activists is that if we just made some decisions differently, we could prop this town up a little better. And that goes back to the dispensary, the tax revenue that they would hope to get from that. So what has happened since the original fight over it is the dispensary has opened, but over the Decatur border. So it's a small municipality just over, 5-minute drive from Decatur that's getting that tax revenue. So I think that's a very kind of a blunt and clear example of, if locals are saying that they want something because they believe that it will lead to tax money that they can spend on things they want. And then you have a billionaire who has spent all this money and has accrued political capital, political influence through that spending, deciding that that's not going to happen. I think that puts it pretty starkly. The idea of who does this person have in his best interest? Is it himself or is it the town?
Mm-hmm.
And so if Buffett here is kind of an avatar for the billionaire class and the way that they are kind of organizing society to their whims, what can we learn about the pushback to that? Who are the activists, and what can we draw from what it looks like to kind of try to galvanize some energy against that and reclaim a kind of self-government?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's what was so interesting to me about Decatur and being in Decatur. You can literally physically see his presence, and you can hear from people, and people see him around, and it's this rare example of the billionaire that is controlling or influencing your life is really there. Where most of the time, we'd be hard pressed to try to exactly connect the dots between the way money is spent and the way it affects our lives. And so I think that also manifested itself in the ability for some activists specifically to rally around the dispensary. They were fighting the city council to kind of reverse their decision against the dispensary. And I think through that, a lot of attention was paid to the manner in which Buffett did influence the whole thing. And from what I was told by local activists, that they feel that did push him back somewhat from being as gung-ho about further actions in that kind of capacity, and the idea that maybe they're pushing him out of Central Illinois a little bit altogether. Maybe he has lost the appetite to influence as aggressively as he has in the past. I think that this specific fight around the dispensary was the most kind of cohesive grassroots pushback that he's felt, that he's seen, and I think that kind of might kind of stymie any given person. Nobody really wants to be in the spotlight like that. Especially when you're someone who spends a lot of money, you're also interested in how that money is interpreted. So if you can Google him, you'll see a ton of great coverage, from his time as sheriff, about how he's just this guy who loves the small town life and just runs around, wanting to help people. Where the reality of how he became sheriff is much more complicated. Sheriff is an elected position. He was appointed when the acting sheriff quit and assigned him as the sheriff. Later on, this sheriff went on to work at this kind of police training facility, this big police training facility that one activist compared to Atlanta's Cop City to me that they have in Decatur. And so there's just like very direct kind of a influence buying that you could kind of see or assume. There was also an issue with Buffett had gotten somewhat of a fraudulent law certificate, and the person who gave him the certificate, he was involved with this standards board in Illinois. He ended up being indicted on charges of felony forgery, fraud, and this certificate business came out. So you see you see some of the more nefarious or sort of kind of not as appetizing elements of how Buffett ended up becoming sheriff and how he kind of plays out some of his law enforcement fantasies.
And finally, were you able to determine this shocking anecdote in the story? Does the guy really drink a gallon of Coke for lunch? Do you have any information on this?
Impossible.
Could you confirm it?
Seems biologically
that was
possible.
From an interview with an Australian newspaper that was that interviewer did sit down with Buffett. So I have no reason to believe that is not true. That was not my direct reporting. I did not witness it. I have to clarify that, but I assume this person went to lunch with Buffett and that's what he saw. Otherwise, why why put that in there?
I'm almost impressed.
But he doesn't like weed. But it's fascinating that weed seems to be the thing that broke his back. And so the key to breaking the grip of the billionaire class is weed. And it's also good for a broken back. So there you go.
Just hoping Sagar doesn't watch this segment. Amos, thank you so much.
Comments.
It's rare also to have such great writing and great reporting at the same time. And the writing in the story is really great. We recommend you check it out over at The Lever. Thank you so much, Amos.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Hey, if you liked that video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Breaking Points.
If you want to see the rest of Counterpoints, go to breakingpoints.com to become a premium member and get the full uncut show every morning in your inbox and on Spotify.
Help us build independent news and get the full show every morning at breakingpoints.com.